Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, back to the Valley of the Judged. I am your one and only gaming monk, better known as Mildra, and with me I have my good brother here in the temple, the man who has occasionally been a Final Destination protagonist, good brother Monarch.
Not lately, thankfully. I think I'm let off the hook for this year. We'll see what the new year brings in a few months.
Well, the last time it happened, it was at the tail end of the year. And, well, we've still got 3.5 more months of that. So, you never know.
Well, no, that initial car hit was beginning of the year. I remember because I got hit the second time, and I was waiting for the hat trick by year's end, but it didn't happen.
Oh, yeah. And that is and brings up why is the title Cloister of the Dice, and that is because things didn't update properly. So let me fix that. Because of course there had to be some bit of shenanigans. The only one that I can't fix is the one on Twitter. You can't fix that midstream. Unfortunate, but it is what it is. But we are back with what is going to be the finale for our look through Augusta Universalis. Obviously, we're at the tail end of the core book. There are a few mini expansions when it comes to Augusta Universalis, but none of them are stuff that is going to have the kind of meat on the bones that I'd be asking for. At least not asking for in this particular series. Like one of them's a module called the Gravitational Artifact. There was also a quick start guide called Liber Maximus, and I think there were a few other things, but they're in Italian. Like I said, there's a part of me that really wishes that the DO2 system came into English, but sadly that is not the case. So we're going to be delving tonight into advanced procedures, into the Bestiary, and then giving our final thoughts on Augusta Universalis. But this is not going to be a lengthy episode. And after a very short bit of fiction with Regenesis, the first thing that they go into is advancement. Which, this was something we saw a fair bit, and the fact that there's 2 different points for advancement. But as a Praetorian progresses and faces new difficulties, his abilities are put to the test and learns new notions or refines knowledge, which becomes greater and greater. So this is how we're going to be obtaining and spending Missio points and Experientia points. And this is going to be it's certainly interesting that we have 2 forms of advancement like this. A lot of times when games do advancement systems, they just have one, whether it be XP as currency, using XP to level up. I'd say in this case, what we have here is more the former than anything else. But it is heavily recommended that the GM read this chapter off to the players, obviously. But this isn't exactly what one might think it's going to be. So, when they're talking about the Tabula Praetorianis, that's basically the character sheet. Each arts and vertex has 9 dots, and above them 9 squares. This is meant to act like an abacus or a counter. Once per scene, when you use one arts, pertier, or vertex for a purpose that makes sense in the narration, and not merely to earn points, you can cross off one of the dots. The success or failure of the action does not matter. Once you've gotten 10 dots in a arts or vertex, instead of making another dot, which isn't there, you clear off the 9 dots and cross off one of these squares. When you get a number of squares more than the current level of a vertex, it increases by 1. So what we have here is a you learn by doing kind of thing. I think one of the big entries that does this sort of thing of learn by doing would be basic role-playing. Where you have to do a percentile roll that you're trying to get over in order to increase your stats. I.e., at low levels, it's going to be easy to increase your stats. At the higher it goes, it's going to be harder to do it as often. But once you increase Virtus, all the dots and squares are reset, and you have to start from the beginning. Now, arts does not increase, but the counter can be applied in the same way to their pertier. When the arts has a square that's more than the current level of the pertier, you can increase the ladder by 1 level, and then reset the process.
See, this is a very similar system to that prophecy game I mentioned a while back. I forget which episode.
Mm-hmm.
But a far less punishing than, oh, you have a 50, use it 50 more times to raise it by 1.
Yeah.
It's the same idea, but not these absolutely ludicrous numbers.
And if any of you have played any Elder Scrolls game in the last 20 years, so just Skyrim, you'll probably be familiar with the whole level developing a skill by using it. You're not going to be able to abuse it in the same way you can in the Elder Scrolls, but the sentiment is still there. Now, let me check something. Now, when it's referring to arts and the like, the individual skills don't level up like that. What levels up is basically the cap for them. But you can spend Experientia to learn new Pertia. Any new Pertia you learn has to be at 1. And essentially, the cap is their particular Rs. The cap is Rs plus 1. With a negative Rs, the minimum level in which you can buy a new Pertia is always 1 and an extra square. And like I said, there's a very learn by doing kind of thing. But the reason why it's not going to be as abusable as it might be in some works, and Mario brings up Final Fantasy II as well. In fact, I'd say the learn by doing thing was even more abusable in that, if only because earlier tech. But it is fun. It is funny that it's one of those things where it's a problem in one game and not a problem in another, even though they're the exact same system. See also tactics in Dragon Age versus gambits in Final Fantasy XII. No, I'm not letting that go. But you can only do this sort of dot increase once per scene. So even if you're using the same checks multiple times over, it's not like you're going to be going up very fast. But we also have checks and experientia points. So XP are obtained once per scene when a check is performed. If the check is avoided due to actions that don't require it, you don't get XP. If you do not risk a failure in your action, you don't get points. During a cooperative check, the PCs who help only gain 1 missio point, but only those who perform the check get the XP. With a critical success, both the related Rs of the Pertia and the related virtues get 2 each. So that's a reason to get those Phos throws. But, of course, then they go into useful actions where it's just revisiting what it means to perform a check, which we already covered that. And any check that's used for attack or defense is valid for the purposes of this. But, remember, only once per scene. And given the way scenes work, there's very much a vibe that you're probably only going to get a handful of experientia points per session. Like, I would be shocked if someone gets more than 5.
It does seem to be a game where your progression is relatively slow.
At least when it comes to experientia points. But that's only one half of the equation. Because there's also missio points. The main ways that you get this is through PTFO, play the fucking objective. So one of the main ways you can get it is by completing your mores, the goal thing that we talked about beforehand. When you complete a recurrent moss, you get 1. When you complete a conclusive moss, you get 10. When you defeat powerful NPCs, you get 1 MP for each upgrade. And when completing a missio, you can get 10 to 15 MP. And I'd say the most common way you're going to get it is by completing a missio. And I do like this part here. If you've got a new PC who's coming in, they don't have any experientia points, but they have a number of missio points equal to half of the lowest total by comparing the totals of the other PCs. That's a nice throw the new guy a bone kind of thing. But all PCs get the same amount of MP at the end of a mission. The complexity of the adventure is rated from 1 to 5, which determines how much missio points you get between 10 to 50. The complexity can be based on duration of the game, how long the mission lasted, complexity of the conspiracies, risk factors, duration out of the game, importance of revelations, and importance of missio primaria. with a range of 1 to 5 for each. Obviously, these are demiurge only and just suggestions. But it does ultimately mean that you're basically rating from 1 to 5 the complexity of the thing, and you could kind of look at it as a mission being 1 or 5 stars. But then when it comes to the Missiones Auxiliares, that's basically secondary tasks, which if you perform them, each one performed gets 10 MP. But only to the Praetorian who completed it. So end of mission MP is given to everybody. Auxiliary is given to whoever did that part. And because we also have Relatio, so if someone ends up questioning the mission, that's one approach that can be taken. As far as spending Missio points, you cannot spend them in the virtues. Those can only level up through XP. Or in anime. Those only level up through points you obtain to gain bonuses or penalties in checks. You can't change the category of your Technolorica. You can spend MP in Pertiae. 1 MP equals 1 XP, and in this way you can get new Pertiae. You can also get a new Tractum at level 1 from the list of your Guardia, or create your own under the supervision of the GM. This costs 15 MP. Remember, the Tractum is basically the equipment of your armor. You can also level up an already owned Tractum. This costs 20 MP if you're leveling up to 1 to 2, and 30 if from 2 to 3. You can also modify your Systemata between mission for 1 MP for each modification. The modifications being things like increase +1 ammo, or provide an additional emblem, or subtract 1 AP from cost. Minimum 2. Increase an emblem, increase ammo, or increase activation by 1. Increase activation by... and it's basically, you can either increase ammo, emblem, or AP, and that'll have a secondary effect. On the other hand, you can subtract for a separate effect as well. I think it was thrown off because it was in a bullet point format. That if I'm setting up a advancement scheme for my players, I'd probably have this in a small table or something like that, just to make it a little easier. Because I know somebody might look at this and go, why would I subtract? Depending on the equipment that you're doing, that might be a better idea. And regardless, each of them cost 1 MP each. But you can advance in rank after completing a certain amount of missions and spending a certain number of MP. So go and consider you're basically needing to do a number of missions and a number of MP times 10 to the next rank that you're going to be going to, all the way up to Tribunus. And when we looked at the ranks, going up higher than Tribunus is putting you on such a high pedestal that you are far too important to be doing missions. Like, at that point, you're the one who's giving out missions, not the other way around. Oh. And of course, you can also get Valor points equal to those that separate you from that of the Great Gradium you just acquired. And remember, Valor points are one way that you can customize your equipment as well. But I do like that there is a nod that the higher up you go, that means the more responsibilities you're expected to have, and possibly the more difficult missions you might be undertaking. And then we get to NPCs. We do have an NPC creation system, but they are taking a more simplified approach. There's one thing that I don't miss from the 2000s and 2010s. It's that whole, and we saw this with at least one game we covered in the past, that whole thing of PCs and NPCs are built the exact same way.
See, I still don't mind doing it for every so often for like a really important PC. I might actually sit down and make it out, but I don't want to do that for everybody.
Yeah, a lot of the games I remember seeing in the early 2000s had that for everybody. It's also the reason I have a love-hate relationship with some Universalis games that do that. Sometimes you need an NPC quickly, and you don't, and the full scratch thing isn't cutting it. Of course, in this case, for regular NPCs, the goal is to simplify. For antagonist NPCs, yeah, then you'd probably want something full scale. But NPCs only have a few stats. Your unique base value, which is the score that you're going to use for any kind of check in battle. The resistance, i.e. the amount of damage that's absorbed every time that they're hit. Rapidity, as for the PCs, to establish the amount of Actio points that's available. It never applies to checks. Special abilities, a set of emblems of your choice, useful for representing their equipment and fighting abilities. And of course, life points, self-explanatory there. And then they have notes for managing NPCs, as well as if you want to do hordes. They advise creating a sheet for the group, which is meant to represent, say, a group of 30 enemies. Because, well, if you're doing the teams fighting an army thing, I don't think you want to stat out every single individual soldier. That'd be ridiculous. But I do like that we have a baseline value of UBV. So you can say, okay, if this is supposed to be a MOOC, this is what it should be compared to PCs. And yes, if Mario, when I'm saying PC, of course I mean player character. I certainly don't mean personal computer. But you can also modify it with the level of difficulty. Easy, UB doesn't change. Medium, difficult, and extreme, it goes up by 1, 2, or 3. The life points is built around narrative importance and or physical size, going from 20 to 350. You're not supposed to use both columns. You're just supposed to pick which one is going to be more appropriate. Obviously, because otherwise you'd have every legendary boss being over 18 meters. So that would mean every legendary boss is the size of Grandpa Gundam. Which I don't think that's what's being asked. And after that, you can distribute a number of points equal to the UBV among resistance, rapidity, and emblems. Each emblem costs 1 point, and in any case, the Demiurge is able to improvise emblems for all NPCs, so long as you pay the AP cost. And because of that setup, creating NPCs that might just be mooks or even bosses, you could probably, after a bit of practice, you could probably knock out most NPCs in just a few minutes. Because the real complexity is going to be the emblems.
Yeah. Honestly, with this system, it's also one of those things like when the players like randomly do shit you're not expecting and you just need to come up with stats for an NPC on the fly.
Mm-hmm.
You can do that with this quite easy.
Oh yeah. And there's already a bestiary that could be used as a basis. I do like that for some of the things we have the traditional emblems, so you have guidance on that front, and guidance is a big damn deal for me. It's not a very large bestiary, but I think it's big enough to do the job.
It's pretty sizable, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like, technically, we had both of these chapters set up to go through, but the bestiary is just examples of what you can do with the NPC creation.
They essentially did what I do of building an NPC system and then building a bunch of pre-gens.
Yeah.
I think the only thing that, and after that is the Annihilation adventure, which we
won't go through that, but I do like to have the adventure here.
Yep, as well as a handful of example tractas that you could use for the different types of Ordos and Gradias. Obviously, it's not acting like these are the ones you need to, because you can just as easily create your own with GM approval. And I'd say the game outright encourages it, and we do have a few sample PCs. As well as the mission outline thing that was mentioned beforehand. And I'm starting to understand why those numbers were there. I think that's for the whole rate it from 1 to 5 kind of thing. And that more or less covers everything with Augusta Universalis. So, geez, we're so there was a lot to this system, but what do you think of what we got out of this?
There are kind of two different ways I'm going to look at this. First, like the actual system itself, ignoring some of the more formatting and setup issues. Like I think we both agreed at points the information in this book could have been organized and presented better.
Mm-hmm.
But it's a really interesting system. There's a lot you can do with it, a lot of customization. Were it better presented, I think it's a very easy thing to kind of pick up and understand. On that front, I think I would definitely recommend this system. There is something that came up near the beginning of this I brought up that is going to be an issue for a lot of people, and that is the terminology in this book can be difficult to keep track of, and it reads kind of weird at times. There are going to be people that start reading this and just start clocking out very quickly. If you've got a few players like that in your group who don't want to have to keep track of all these kind of weird terms, it will be hard to get some people to want to play this.
Mm-hmm. Oh. Yeah, I could see that. I'll have to go back and look at what my grade was originally. Oh.
Yeah, it's weird because I'd want to put that it's as close as possibly strongly recommend, with a caveat that might put it into a caution or proceed with caution almost. Not because of the system itself, just because again, some people are just going to start clocking out reading this book.
Yeah.
Were we not doing this for Valley, I may well have been one of those people, just because I know some of the people I've gamed with in the past. I'm like, I'm not going to get anyone to sit down and read this.
So, for me personally, as somebody who's dabbled with this as well as its sister game, Musha Shugyo, aka Dragon Fighters / Advanced Dragon Fighters. Part of me really thinks that at some point in the future, DO2 should be translated. I do think that if that was translated, it might help immensely here. It's not a deal breaker, but it certainly would help. I can see some of the shared DNA, though. Musha Shugyo was significantly less complex than what we've got here, but there's some elements that intersect. Now, that being said, the book itself is a bit backloaded, where I don't think things really start clicking until midway through. A lot of the early stuff is very much on the narrativist side. I remember early on you were concerned that there was going to be a lack of guidance when it came to skills because of how skills work here.
Yeah, but it came much later.
Mm-hmm. I do think this is going to be a tricky game to work with on virtual tabletop because of the way a sectum works. I think if you're using Tabletop Simulator, it's going to be easy.
If you got players who can just keep track of that bit themselves, and you're fine trusting them, I don't think it'd be too much of an issue.
Mm-hmm.
There wouldn't be much in the actual simulators I'm aware of that might cause some issues, but it's a simple enough workaround, I think.
You'd have to make the track the cards yourself, but that's not a deal breaker.
Yeah.
Which, speaking of which, I do kind of wish there was a editable version of the Tracta layout. There kind of is, but only. But it's not. it's not. It's not as editable as I would have liked. Um, Now, I do think that you know how some games you could just plug in your favorite setting and have that work. You're not going to be able to do that here. Oh,
It's very much tied to setting.
yes.
We're not saying you can't do it with a different setting, but it's not going to be easy.
Oh.
It's very limited in
Mhm.
what it's going to want to do.
And personally, I don't mind that. But I know some people want to take their set of bullet points that they call a setting and put it in anywhere.
Yeah.
I think the only if there's one formatting thing I wish was added in, it's some sort of quick reference guide for the emblems. Now, I realize this would be a bit tricky to do because some emblems are doing a lot more heavy lifting in terms of their complexity. But given the way both Tracta and NPC abilities are done, I think some kind of quick reference that you could print off would be a godsend for this kind of game. Oh. But I do find it kind of funny that this is twice in a row that we have had a game that involves highly customizable power armor.
Not the intention, but hey, it happens.
I can promise you all this, it's not going to be a hat trick. I'm not bowling a turkey. That being said, just a lot of the real problems that I have are quality of life things. Like some kind of quick reference when it comes to character creation and advancement. Maybe a similar thing for NPC creation. Obviously, I mentioned emblems. And I was gonna say maybe one more mission, but that last part isn't a deal breaker. The Annihilation mission is fine enough as it is. And while I'm at it, let me take a look at how much this thing is going to be costing on Drive-Thru RPG. So, at the time of this recording, the PDF is $18. For what we have here, I'd say that's a decent deal.
Oh yeah, that's definitely worth it.
Uh,
Price is not the issue. Going to be an issue here.
There's certainly more stuff in the in Augusta Universalis. The big problem is a lot of the other stuff is not translated. There's also an OST for the thing, which I don't have. But let me see here. But yeah, most of the stuff that has been translated, I have. So there's not a whole lot, but there's a good amount, and I'd say because of the way a sectum works, it'd be interesting to do something Kamen Rider-esque with this system, especially since this would be a way to actually do utility forms in a way that it doesn't make you have to do multiple character sheets at once. Mario says, "Hey, Monk, you have 2 nickels." Which isn't a lot, but it's weird that it happened twice. But obviously, the book does have bookmarks, but it does not have an index. In fact, let me double check to make sure I'm not talking out of my ass. Yeah, no index. Odd choice, but okay.
This is a book that needs an index. We've let it slide a bit for your smaller ones. No, this needs an index.
Yeah, ultimately, the only thing that's keeping this book from strongly recommended is some people may glaze over when it comes to the use of Latin and some quality of life things.
Yeah.
That's really it, which is why I'm perfectly fine with putting it as recommended.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
Oh.
I wish I could give this one a strongly recommend. I do.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't.
Oh. And Mario asked, does it have hyperlinks?
No. I don't think it did.
Yeah, it does in the table of contents.
Oh, well, that's nice.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's where you really want it, because you can already kind of use the bookmarks on the side. But I guess that's something.
Oh, it's something I've talked about in plenty of past episodes. I think that's why he brought it up.
Yeah.
But with that said, that is going to close the book on our look at Augusta Universalis. So we may as well go into what we've got planned for the next couple weeks. So let me get out the pen. And so next week is a double feature week. We're going to be looking at Valiant Horizon and Saints of the Empty Throne. And the week after, so the first week of September, we will be looking at Gates of Crystalia, because I'm continuing my exploration of console RPG meets TTRPG projects, and Gates of Crystalia will be an interesting one for us because instead of using dice, you're using a playing card deck.
Not our first rodeo with the playing cards.
Nope. It's always nice to see.
It is.
I don't think we see enough of it. And obviously, for Sunday, that will be the return of the Record of Swordforged Worlds. This time talking a bit more about the Barbarous. So that'll be fun to delve into. And in the next 48 hours, I'll probably end up streaming first Berserker some more until I finish that, and then move on to the next thing. So we definitely have that to look forward to over the next few days. But until then, on behalf of the good brothers present and not present, my name is Mildra. I am your gaming monk. Stay fucking frosty, everybody.